like to start right here on my left and let the panelists introduce themselves. We're going to talk first about VR, then we'll move over to esports, and I'm going to try to have about 15 minutes Q&A at the end. We've been told to cut it off right around the hour mark, but we'll have a mic over here for some questions if you think of any during that time. So we'll go ahead and let the panelists introduce themselves, and we'll start firing some questions.
So I'm Chris Pate. I'm the portfolio manager for gaming gear at Logitech. So I run the group that designs and develops gaming gear.
And I'm Robert Halik, and I do technical marketing for the Radeon Technologies group at AMD.
I'm Chris Geiser. I'm the director of SSD sales for Samsung SSD. We're the world's largest manufacturer of SSDs.
Hi guys, my name is Stan Press. I'm the managing director over at Frank Magid Associates. We're a strategic consultancy, not a law firm. I have to always say that out loud. And I have a great background in PC gaming, 10 plus years in esports, former competitor in Battlefield 2, 2142, and I'm really excited to be on this panel with all these guys.
Fantastic, thanks guys.
Wait, were our introductions that good that we all deserved a round of applause?
Yeah,
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
Woohoo, we have names.
Tone it
Very
down. It's
exciting.
Sunday morning.
No, keep it up. I love this.
They must pump oxygen in this place like the casinos. Everybody's
It's like
so
Vegas.
awake.
Yeah.
It's very encouraging. Dunkin' Donuts. You know, I miss Dunkin' Donuts. I live out on in
Caffeine.
California now, and they're not on every corner like out here. It's kinda,
Yeah, as a former East Coaster, I can relate.
Yeah, it's-
So recently, an article on Game Crate discussed kind of some of the hot trends and the buzzwords, like I said earlier. And I just want to read a quote and then go right into the questions. Research firm DFC Intelligence analyst David Cole said, quote, "The emergence of esports and virtual reality is driving consumers to buy high-end PC systems, not only to play games, but to watch others play games." That's kind of the quote that set up this panel. Going and discussing virtual reality and esports are kind of two of the hottest digital trends. So I'd really like to just go back down the panel like we did for the introductions. And I'd like everyone to kind of share your overall thoughts on the VR trend and how it is affecting PC gaming and the PC gaming business overall.
So, I mean, obviously the enthusiasm is huge. The number of people here at 10 in the morning on a Sunday is indicative of that. What we see is an opportunity to really redefine the way that experiences are delivered and gives us an opportunity, obviously, to make some new, incredibly interesting gaming gear. So it's a great new direction, I think, for the industry.
Yeah, I think there's been a huge change in the way consumers buy for PC gaming. It used to be that graphics cards, our wheelhouse under $100, were overwhelmingly the number one driver of the market, you know, well over 50%. But in the last couple of years, we've seen the market pull significantly upwards towards, you know, $100 to $250 graphics cards. Actual gaming graphics cards is now the largest segment of the market for people buying off the shelf. And that was unthinkable 10 years ago. So enthusiast PC gaming is huge and growing, and we would love to make it faster and faster.
I was out at NAB, which is the National Association of Broadcasters meeting this week in Las Vegas, and one of the things, the big three trends that I saw at NAB were 8K content, drones, and then virtual reality. And it was kind of interesting to see how the large broadcasters, the large content providers, the large companies that were managing transmission of data were thinking about these trends and building up their capabilities to be able to transmit all this information over the internet and over broadcast signals. So from our perspective, you know, we see the same trends that everybody else sees on the consumer side. Obviously, people are buying a lot more PC, they're buying higher performance SSDs, they're buying higher performance systems in order to be able to manage that. And then also on the corporate side, on the business side, we're seeing, you'll see all of our partners on the floor, all the custom gaming PC guys that are obviously focusing a lot of time and attention on building out higher performance PCs to be able to manage VR content. So it's an exciting time for us.
Yeah, I'm always excited about VR. I'm always excited about esports. But I always got to ask the audience, how many people here pre-ordered a Vive or an HTC Vive or an Oculus? Raise your hands. Okay, so we're looking like 5%, like 3% of the audience. How many people do you think here you guys know your PCs. How do you think they can handle a VR game? Do you think your PC's worth like $1,500, $2,000 worth of hardware? Raise your hands, let's see it. Okay, so we have a good install base. That's about half of people here. And about 4% of people actually pre-ordered an HTC Vive or an Oculus. Can I see a show of hands of people who want to buy one? All right, that's gonna be our next question. Like, would you
That's
pay
in
its
the
current
outline. You're
price?
gonna have to wait a minute.
So when you guys look around, you get to see how much there's actual interest in this. Guys are all a natural barometer of what is about to happen in VR. That is some really, really cool stuff. Despite some barriers of entry of having a high-end PC and an expensive headset that hopefully you guys who pre-order them will get them soon. Apologies about any delays. It's not my fault, but I feel bad. But these are some of the natural challenges. You come in at the very early ground. To see what we call early adopters jump into this so hard, so fast, that is an indicator to me that VR is going to be a thing. Whether it's a spectator experience, whether it's movies and games, or have you guys actually seen virtual desktop? Some of you guys, it's a really cool virtual desktop thing you put on a VR headset and your desktop instantly becomes a VR space. Go look at the YouTube video, it is actually really cool. That sold me on VR. I was kind of like, I don't know if I want to get $800 headsets or these kind of things. That one app, just to use my desktop in a VR space, sold me. Again, seeing you guys get excited about this, that is an indicator for me. I'm excited.
That's actually a great bridge for the next thing I wanted to go over. I mean, we see a lot of tech trends come, and anyone who understands business, part of innovating business is you have to come out with new products. You need to tweak ones you've got and hopefully open up brand new categories to drive, in revenue for your shareholders. We've seen tech trends kind of come and look like they're going to blow up and be big and then kind of just go out the back door with a whimper. I'd like to discuss with a couple of the panelists, do you think VR, virtual reality, is here to stay? Is this going to be a permanent part of our lives, or is this just going to kind of be a fad that comes and goes, maybe similar to like 3D televisions and other things that looked really big at first and now they're just gone?
So it really ultimately depends on the content, right? We're already starting to see AR happening in like, if you get a Corvette, you get a HUD up on the windscreen, right? It shows you information about what's going on. As the content becomes more immersive, as it becomes more compelling, I think that's where it really drives the interest and really drives the stickiness of the technology. And to Stan's point, and yours as well, the accessibility of it, the affordability of it is a large part of it. So in the first generation, it's a little bit of an obstacle, but technology always finds a way to get less expensive over time. So.
Well, affordability of high-end gaming systems is something we can help with. So yeah, one of our goals is to bring down the cost of VR. Right, it is a price barrier for a lot of people, and generating faster GPU hardware is our mission, and that will naturally bring down the cost of what it takes to build a VR-ready system. But I think the genie is out of the bottle on this one. Versus 3D TV, you saw a lot of interest, I think, from industry players, but word on the street, everybody was kind of, 3D TV, right? It's not something that people talked about on Reddit or on forums or anything like that. It wasn't exciting in the community. This time it's different. Everybody I talk to either wants to try VR or has tried VR. We've had 4-hour lines at our booth here to try VR, and Oculus has had 4-hour lines, and never saw that with 3D TV. It's different this time. It's hard to characterize, it's hard to put a number on it, but I have no doubt that this is here to stay and it's going to be big.
Just to follow up on Stan's question, Stan's questions earlier, how many people in the audience have a Samsung Gear VR? How many people have a phone that is capable of supporting the $100 headset that you buy for the Samsung VR, which would be a Galaxy S6, a Galaxy S7, Note 5, any of those? So a lot more people have a capability. I would recommend if you haven't tried VR yet, that you actually go try the Samsung Gear VR. It's a $100 headset. It's very affordable, very easy, very light, very easy to configure. And there's a lot of very rich content that's out there to supporting, high quality video, high quality images. Once you try it, once you put it on your head and you actually, start playing the games and start interacting with it, I wouldn't say that this is a fully mature technology, because obviously There's a reason that it's a entry-level product that's kind of more mainstream, and certainly some of the new systems that we're seeing that are coming out based on the Vive and some of the higher density Oculus stuff is going to be more rich, but there's still something pretty amazing about it when you first try it. It's something that it's very difficult to understand or describe until you actually use it. So I would recommend going and getting one of those systems and just trying it out. We certainly think it's a technology that's here to stay, and we're investing both on the consumption side as well as on the content creation side to be able to enable that ecosystem to be able to deliver VR content. So Samsung's excited about it, and we're certainly investing as if it's going to be a major trend going forward.
So I got to ask, did anyone ever wait more than 30 seconds to watch a 3D TV in line? Like, anyone? No? Okay, good. I just want to make sure I'm on the same page as you guys. I think actually, to your point, the Samsung Gear VR is a great entry-level opportunity for all of you with Samsung phones. You can actually pick one up for $100, and you have some really cool entryway of checking out some VR content. You can show your friends. You can actually fly with it on a plane, and people still look at you. You're a little weird on a plane wearing a VR headset. But you know what? My roommate was doing that. He works at Twitch, so I was like, hey, cool. I get to try all this cool stuff, and we're on a plane, and he's wearing the headset. I was just kind of like, okay, well, hey.
The Google Glass guys back in the day.
Well, hopefully less douchey, hopefully. But the accessibility is a big thing. Our friends on the console side of things, they'll have a VR headset for about $400, $500 total. That's going to drive a lot of that. Then you're going to have the fact that mobile is going to be one of the bigger drivers of VR if Apple gets in there, if more Android solutions get in there, and thanks to Samsung, they're leading the charge because they came out at first. Mobile does really well with this kind of stuff in gaming in general. So you think, hey, VR actually has a lot of opportunities elsewhere. We just got to see if those costs go down, and we got to see the content come. The biggest thing people forget is that you can take a couple lessons from console gaming. Software sells hardware. As soon as we see that killer app on VR, which, in my opinion, Valkyries is amazing. It's a lot of fun. I always wanted to be a starfighter pilot growing up. So, Valkyrie lets me do that in some crazy cool ways. I'm hoping that's it. If not, I'm hoping we find something else that is absolutely what sells VR to PC gaming.
So I think everyone's kind of in agreement that VR is going to have a large impact on the PC. Where do you guys believe that impact is going to come? Is that going to come in gaming, entertainment, even education? I know it's a little bit of all of the above, but where do you think the biggest impact will come? We'll start down at the other end and come this way this time.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's cool that we went down in order. We can go back
to
now.
The last one, so you get to feel this first.
Yeah, I actually look at the situation. I think that gaming is a stronger driver of next generation trends, better than adult or porn. That is a funny thing to say. But when you look at VR, it's computer gaming that is driving that. Mobile gaming, console gaming, all this stuff is coming first. I love the thought of education in VR. I can imagine that people have flight anxiety. That's a great opportunity for you to come in and find VR therapy as a solution to actually help figure that out, work through that, whatever that looks like. I think education from school. Hey, you can actually make things more interactive. You actually want to go to class and actually check out a social studies class with a history lesson in VR. When you get that kind of engagement, when it gets more entertaining, well, school actually becomes fun. We can try to do that, right, guys? People went through school, it wasn't always that easy. I think that gaming is going to do a lot first. Entertainment, people are still trying to figure that out. We do a lot of research for a lot of TV and movie studios, and they're all trying to figure out how to make that happen. Is it an event-based experience? Do you go and find VR because you don't really have that at home? Do you find a way to deliver that content? How do you deliver that content if someone is at home and has a VR headset, whether it's on mobile or PC or console? These are all questions that have yet still to be defined because we're still waiting for the first people to come in and give it a shot. The question is, what movie studio, what TV studio, what game is really going to make that happen first?
Yeah, that's a really good point, though. So, we obviously see a lot of big trends, and gaming is certainly one of those things. Just in terms of some of the non-gaming trends, just so you guys kind of see what's out there, the things that are being commercialized today on the VR side, we see a lot of people doing kind of CAD applications, industrial design, things that you actually need to interact with things virtually in space before you actually build them. That's
really
a huge
smart
application.
Things.
Yeah. We see a lot of real estate kind of applications where you want to be able to kind of design the interior of a home, and people do walkthroughs and fly-throughs of homes before you actually have to go visit them. So if you're trying to do something remotely or virtually, that's a really interesting application that we've seen for it that is being commercialized today. We've certainly seen a lot of educational type of stuff, so where people are actually trying to do distance learning, things where you're trying to actually learn, hands-on. That's another reason that, the whole distance learning, online learning kind of area is is kind of an amazing place that we can see VR technology play. And then obviously adult and entertainment are two other areas where they're going to see a lot of movement on that side, and that's just any kind of new technology is going to drive it on that side. In terms of the gaming stuff, I personally don't believe that a lot of the killer applications are going to be on porting existing types of games over to the VR platform. I think it's going to be new concepts and entirely new types of gameplay that are going to create new demand for VR. And I think we haven't seen the game developers really try to think in ways that are going to utilize the new capabilities of VR. But we'll see that stuff coming out soon. It's probably going to be the smaller guys, the indie guys, that are going to do it, in my estimation, only because they're willing to take bigger risks on a new technology. So wait for that killer application, or don't wait. Go get a system yourself and design it yourself.
Yeah, I think the markets have been covered well, but I think it's also interesting that gaming is in the lead. Gaming is leading this market because gaming is cool, and my high school record will tell you that wasn't always the case. But it's nice because gaming is the most demanding use case. It drives the most number of pixels per second at the highest frame rates, at the highest refresh rates. It requires the most triangles per second. It requires the most responsiveness, the most immersion. That's awesome, right? Gaming is finally in the lead. And if you get that right, you get everything else right too, because everything else is less demanding. And that's a cool position to be in as gamers at a gaming company who live and breathe this stuff. It's really nice to finally be in charge.
Yeah, like the other guy said, the content's going to drive really where the experiences go, right? The overall just how engaging the content can be made and how fast the technology can advance to get higher speeds, stuff like that. Not really much more to say than what's already been said, honestly.
This next question is kind of similar, and you touched on it a little bit on the other end of the table. But what are some of the coolest potential uses for virtual reality that our audience may have never even thought of?
I actually really think that some of the samples of Dota 2 spectator content that popped up. There's a short video that Valve released on Steam VR that actually showcased where you're watching a Dota 2 match, and if anyone's heard of the International, where it's a $17 million prize pool and tens of millions of people watching worldwide, kind of a thing. But you actually have this really cool layout where the whole game's laid out on the table, and you have screens with lots of data and numbers, and you look behind you and you actually see all the different characters and heroes picked in-game. And I think Dota 2 is going to be one of the first leading games where the spectator experience, you can actually watch an esports tournament, which people will absolutely watch on Twitch, or they'll watch it in the game, or they'll spend the thousands of dollars to actually fly there and watch it in person. That is actually really exciting. I think that's one of the things I'm going to be looking out for when that comes to fruition.
One of the cool things I saw at NEB, which was really interesting from a VR perspective, was, and I think this is where that market's going to go towards, is the drones that we're seeing now that are bigger, can carry 500 pounds, can carry three-dimensional cameras, can pan, tilt, zoom in every direction. What we're seeing now is those are all going to be controlled through basically tablet initially kind of interfaces, but then ultimately is going to be VR. So you've got a full-time camera that's basically looking in 360 degrees. You've got a stable platform that's basically flying through space. You can program the path of the drone to be able to fly through any type of environment automatically and automatically return to you to a base station. And then being able to actually have a VR headset of everything that thing sees while you're actually flying through that environment and being able to interact with it in real time. That technology exists today. In terms of how that's commercialized and what are the applications for that, I don't know yet. But that from a kind of a, just kind of a mind-blowing, while this is available now, we can do this today, perspective was pretty eye-opening for me about things that we should be thinking about in terms of putting ourselves in places that we haven't been able to go previously.
500 pounds? That's like two of me. Wow.
Yeah, they're massive machines with giant broadcast quality cameras on them. They're amazing. Yeah.
I think for me, the big application is going to be education. You tell a kid a blue whale is 100 feet long. A kid that, 8, 10 years old has no idea how much 100 feet is. You would be hard-pressed to find an adult that can accurately guess 100 feet. I can't. So to put that kid in VR and let him look up and have this blue whale just endlessly go over his head is life-changing. It's redefines the way you can sense and understand learning, or the ride of Paul Revere being in Massachusetts. The idea that you could put on this headset and be transported to that time, that place, at that moment, and experience that with your own eyes. We can't get that right now. You have a drawing in a history book, and that's not as nowhere near as good as being there. And that's the power of VR, right? You can be at another time, in another place, fully in that moment. And I think for education, outside of gaming, outside of entertainment, that's life-changing for a lot of kids. And the generation that are in school now are going to benefit from that. And I think it's going to be transformative.
It could be interesting for things like family history as well, right? Imagine being able to kind of record a virtual diary of what you have done in your life, and things that you want people in the future to be able to see, to understand, and you can be like the where my voice went away. Harry Potter, the Mirror of Erised, he can go and actually, instead of just watching his parents, he can, listen to them, hear what they're saying, and learn from them, even though they're not there anymore. So, it's interesting.
One thing that we all talked about was really a sense of scale. It's not just size, it's emotion too, experiencing something that you're on a whole new scale, something that redefines what you actually experience. Everybody here really said some cool things, a lot cooler than what I said, so great work, guys.
Now, during the course of the panel so far, we've discussed pricing on different levels, but I want to kind of drill down on that. Discuss where VR pricing is right now, VR availability to the masses, and your expectation of future availability and pricing. When is this going to be, like was said, there is a $100 option, so on and so forth, but moving forward with different leading products, when do you think it's going to be more affordable for the average consumer?
Are we still going really structured back and forth, or?
Yeah, we're going to start down
Okay,
here now.
okay.
All right. I get to make something up first. Honestly, to me, that's a question more for the hardware vendors, the HTCs, the Oculuses of the world. Maybe Samsung. But it's ultimately what they can do to make component costs better and drive volumes.
Yeah, without putting words in the mouth of HTC or Oculus, I think it is the destiny of consumer electronics devices to be bigger, better, faster, cheaper. And that's just the way it goes, right? With microwaves, TVs, cars, like anything. From our end, increasing performance for the same dollar with every generation is vital for us. That's what drives our business, right? So at least on the hardware side, on the GPU side, we can make a VR experience a lot more affordable, be it a high-end VR experience or a mid-range VR experience, whatever you want to do, and at least we can help with that, right? We can bring down costs and keep performance the same, or even increase it at that dollar.
Yeah, I don't get into forecasting where my cost is going to be in the future, but all I can say is when we first started our SSD business back in 2011 or so. SSDs were $2.50 a gigabyte. Now you can buy one for 30 cents a gigabyte. So clearly the cost comes down significantly, and that's going to continue to happen. For the same drivers that AMD has on the chipset side is the same drivers that drive down NAND flash costs, which is what the primary cost of SSDs are. So, it's a great time to be, to be in the gaming space because things are getting cheaper and more powerful. And I'm of the time where I can remember the amount of money I was spending on, gaming PCs back in 1998, and it was, a lot more than I'm spending now, and I'm probably getting, 50, 100 times the performance, so excited about that.
Yeah, well, you also got to remember that this is the first wave. Things will get cheaper, things will get easier, things will get better. Have you ever looked what using a VR headset looks like in your home? That's a lot of freaking wires. If you're not tripping over yourself setting that up, well, you're going to trip over yourself when you're trying to do some full room experiences in VR. And one of these days, we'll finally make using VR, using Kinect technology on Xbox, or any kind of remote viewing or virtualization technology, look cool. Because I certainly don't look cool when I'm trying to play a VR game. I look like a freaking idiot. It's kind of hilarious. Once that stuff, well, I think people will be happy to actually enjoy VR independently of that. I'm not really worried about that pricing or availability because it will come down. It is natural. It is only natural. I come from hardware as well. I used to work at Astro Gaming. I used to work at Elgato Gaming. I know exactly this stuff, the same stuff that all of us have to deal with in hardware. Eventually it'll happen. Things will get cheaper. More people will be interested. More people are buying it. Give it 2-3 years. Give it 5 years. 5-10 years maybe. Everyone will have some kind of VR solution in a home. It'll be potentially more interesting than having a TV in your home because it's a lot easier to...
Whoa.
Hey, you're on SSDs.
No, I know. We'll get them. Or we'll have TVs with VR in it anyway.
Oh, there you go. Hey, I like your Evo hard drives. This is a plug for those guys. They're good. Did I make up for that? Is that good? Okay.
Bit of a technical question. What is retinal resolution for virtual reality, and why is it relevant to the technology?
They all look at me. Okay, so retinal resolution is the idea that you can put enough pixels on the screen per square inch to trick the eye into believing that you're looking at reality. That is possible within our lifetimes. We even know the number, 16,000 by 16,000 pixels per eye. If you can reach that per eye at 240 frames per second, your brain will interpret that as reality. That is what we're working on. We can do that. We can do that in the next 10 to 15 years. That's going to happen. And when you combine that with technologies like HDR, which, for example, Samsung is working on, that addresses the color component to make the darkest scenes and the lightest scenes and the contrast between them, again, indistinguishable from reality. The display industry is working on TVs and monitors and panels. In 10 years' time, it will look like you are looking at that scene through a window, not through a monitor. Right? And you put all of that stuff together, and well, suddenly you have reality sitting on your head. You kind of have a holodeck, don't you?
I like that Star Trek reference.
Yeah, and that is 10 years away, 10 to 15 years away. Within our lifetimes, we will be able to do that. Already in our office in Toronto, we have 4K by 4K headsets that we're working with, right? So already we're doubling, tripling, quadrupling the resolutions of the headsets that are available today and coming up with the hardware to drive them. So retinal resolution is a simulation of reality, and we will do it.
Great. I want to go ahead and move on to our second topic, so we still have a little bit of time left for questions here at the end. We're going to start discussing esports, electronic sports, competitive gaming. It's, over the past decade, it's kind of been a subject of conversation. Over the past 3 or 4 years, that it has exploded into the mainstream. I'd just like to start again right here. Share kind of your thoughts on the growing esports phenomenon, where it's been and where it's going, and kind of how your company is currently interacting with the space.
So I would start back further than a decade, honestly. I've been working with Logitech to try to, we started back in 1997 with a little tournament called the Frag in Dallas. We've been pushing tournaments and helping various players to live the dream of playing games for prizes of being professional athletes. It's a great thing. I'm incredibly excited about where it's come. I mean, in the past few years, it's just exploded. Last year, the League of Legends finals were watched by more people than the NBA finals, which is insane. It's awesome. Stan was saying that the prize pool for Dota is up to $17 million for the next international. It's just incredible. And there's not a weekend that goes by without something up on the Chromecast on my TV that I'm watching, just because it's so much fun, so awesome. So we're really excited about it. We're working with multiple different teams around the world. We've got Team Solomid, we've got Cloud9, we've got Empire Gaming, who unfortunately didn't beat Wings on their way to the Manila Championship. Yeah, sorry, complexity. It's just it's great to be able to work with these guys to develop new gear, to find out what it is that they need to succeed, and to be able to help and support them. So we're all in. We're super excited.
One thing I like about esports is that it's kind of democratized gaming. I'm thinking back 5 years ago. Take a GPU worth $500. That level of performance is now about $100 today. So you can imagine what's going to happen in 5 more years. But hardware has evolved very rapidly in a very short amount of time, which makes good performance accessible to a whole lot of people very quickly. And you combine that with the approachability of MOBAs, for example, like HOTS or Dota or LoL. It's easy to jump in. It doesn't.
Dota's not easy to jump in, man.
Well,
Dota is not easy to jump in.
well,
If all you want to do
I'm
is get
kidding, I'm
yelled
kidding.
at.
irrespective of the potential
Irrespective of my
toxicity.
lack of skill there, yeah.
But I think it's approachable, right? It's a very easy genre to get into. It's kind of like a board game almost, that the rules are fairly straightforward and the characters are fun to play, and they're free. These games are all free to play, aside from microtransactions. And you put all of that into a pot, and suddenly you have tens of millions of people that are gamers overnight. By comparison, first-person shooters, I think, are quite complicated for novices. And so now we've seen a new wave of gamers with access to low-cost hardware, playing games that are easy to jump into and are a hell of a lot of fun to play. And I think that's what's driving esports and will continue to drive esports.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the same thing that's driving esports is the same thing that's driving this event. You've got, whatever it is, 90,000 people that are going to attend PAX East, and there's could be 10 times as many of that watching it live online and try to participate remotely. We're obviously a Korean-based company, and so we're in the most intensely esport-driven country in the world. So we certainly feel it and see it every day in terms of our customer base and the kind of engagement we have with our customers. The one thing that I think we're internally thinking about is changing esports from just a method of advertising to people that have a lot of interest and affinity towards SSDs, and starting to think about what are the ways that we can really engage with our audiences. So who are the people that are really driving from a product development perspective, from a quality perception perspective, what are the things that we can do to really engage with our customer base and to make a relationship that's more meaningful. So we're, you'll see a lot of stuff from us in the future. Obviously, we've been a big sponsor in the past. We were the title sponsor of World Cyber Games for every year that it was out, I think, and you'll see more stuff from us in the future. So we're excited about esports.
Yeah, esports is a fantastic space. I've been lucky enough to be part of this alongside Jason for about the last 10 years. I'm a former competitor, former team manager, former team sponsor, back when I was Accessory Brands league sponsor back then. I actually used to compete in LAN events in conference rooms not much bigger than this. And I've seen it blow up to the Madison Square Garden in New York City, the Staples Center in LA. And it is an amazing experience to go from this all the way to that. I remember when, as a competitor, we would actually pay for our own flights and hotels. I remember that our after parties were a hotel room full of a bathtub with like ice and booze, and not a AAA DJ playing an after party. To see all that stuff for the last 10 years is really, really cool, because this is the stuff we dreamed about 10 years ago. We're thinking, man, it'd be cool if I didn't have to mow extra lawns or work extra hours at the restaurant to get out here. Now, players are like, I'm not getting business class? Screw you guys. I look at this and I see that our research shows that 18% of gamers watch esports content. Our research shows that gamers who watch esports content consume messaging apps far better and more, social media apps far better, smart TVs, you should actually take note of that. I'll send you that deck later. And people who watch esports tend to be on the cutting edge. They're more engaging because the competitors, the content is more engaging. The players of these pro teams on Cloud9, on Complexity, they're actually more accessible. This is what makes esports such a crazy driving thing that traditional sports doesn't really have. I like saying traditional sports because it makes it feel old and esports feel new. Run with that, guys. It's a fantastic space. The fact that companies are starting to realize that, yeah, went from 6-figure sponsorships to 7-figure sponsorships. We're going to 8- and 9-figure sponsorships to leagues and teams, because we're finally getting that point of some level, I wouldn't say some level of maturity, we're still pretty far away from that, but we're getting close. We're getting legality issues, we're getting unionization issues, we're trying to figure out rev sharing opportunities for the leagues and the players and the teams, just like you have with traditional sports. Finally, some elements of the NFL, NBA, baseball, football is in the UK, soccer as we like to call it in the States. Finally, a lot of that stuff is actually coming into esports and people are thinking about that. Football actually was a sport that people made fun of 100 years ago. Like, you run around running into each other and you throw a ball. You think about it in a very basic context, it's kind of weird. Same way people look at League of Legends, CSGO, Dota 2, Hearthstone, World of Tanks, Call of Duty, all these major esports is like, why would you watch that? The fact is we accomplished all of that ground that, say, football has, that baseball, that basketball has over 100, 150 years. We've done that in about 10, 15 years. So we should all feel pretty good about ourselves. And thanks to the sponsors that do help, it's the endemic sponsors. These are the guys that have helped fund esports for so long. It was a Samsung that did the World Cyber Games. AMD came and used to do a lot of LAN events, so there's a lot of cool stuff in that space. And Logitech funds some of the top gaming teams. It's the endemic sponsors, the ones who are actually part of the space, that really helped blow up. So guys, give these guys a shout out. You guys are doing some good work.
I think also.
Round of applause. I think I see a Logitech logo on a Cloud9 hoodie over there. Okay, there you are. I see you.
Yeah, I think one of the other great things about esports is that it's also deeply psychological. That I think a lot of people finally feel like they found a community they belong in. I grew up being obsessed with games. Back before there was any online stats tracking, there was like the CLQ for Quake 2, and I was obsessed with being number 1 or 2 for CTF in Quake 2. But I was the only kid in my entire school who was obsessed with gaming like that.
No Rocket Arena? No Quake 2?
No, I got out of that genre. But now it's so easy to find someone who loves gaming and is passionate about gaming, just like you, and to sit there on Twitch and to be with the community where you feel like you belong, playing the same games that you play, as passionate as you are, man, that just feels good. To come to an event like PAX, where everybody's as excited as you are about all the booths, all the vendors, all the games, that feels good. And I think that ultimately is what is driving esports. People finally feel like they're home. They've found their people, their tribe. That's what drives it.
That's a really, really great point. It's a sense of community. You saw a lot of people who watch sports, traditional sports, and you watch it with friends and family, you talk about it, you still see it on Twitter. When a crazy UFC fight happens, man, something crazy happens, and my Twitter just lights up all the time. It's ridiculous. And I'm wondering, okay, somebody got punched in the face, I gotta figure out what happened. But you look at the opportunity, and places where people can talk about this. You used to have Ventrilo, you used to have TeamSpeak, now everyone uses Discord, I hope, and you create a treehouse effect where everyone gets to hang on the clubhouse or treehouse, and you get to talk about this stuff, and you get to watch it with your friends in a voice group, a voice channel, live. And you get to freak out when something crazy happens, you get to boo a team when they do something dumb or stupid, which is always gonna happen, so much for positivity in esports. And again, it's the community, you're so right. Thank you for bringing that up.
Come back full circle. What are your thoughts on virtual reality in esports? Will this technology merge to where we see, instead of sitting in front of a monitor playing Counter-Strike or Dota, people have the virtual reality on and they are competing inside a virtual world?
I look a lot at this stuff, and I'm not immediately seeing the games in their current state be played on a VR headset. It might be a few ways out. I do see the spectator experience being really interesting. Mm-hmm. I can't always make it to Katowice, Poland, to watch one of my favorite esports tournaments, to watch some amazing CSGO happen. And I love being in a crowd. That's why I'm going to be at TI6. I'm going to be at all the leagues finals in the States, and I'm going to try to hit up as many majors in the States. Hopefully see some of you guys at DreamHack Austin. And I'm not always going to be able to make it to the international ones. I know that not everybody can actually make it out to all those, because these things are expensive. It's almost getting as difficult to attend like a Comic-Con. It's like a Coachella, but nerdier and harder to get to. And I would actually say, you know what, I'll pay $50 for a ticket for a weekend and watch it in VR. I'll just sit on the couch, order in some Chinese, and...
Look weird while you do it?
What's that?
Look weird while you do it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's cool, though.
Yeah, I will actually... Someone said something from the crowd? Yeah. Was that the wrong thing to say? Or should I pick another type of food? I'll order some food. Okay, we'll make it that way. But I'm going to order some food in, and I'm going to sit down and just watch it in comfort and watch it in a really cool way where I can actually see data, statistics, I can manipulate the field, I can actually maybe do a cool replay with some of the cool controls and look back at a moment that just happened. I think Dota 2 is going to be the first game to really showcase that, because I really hope Dota 2 is. Mm-hmm. Valve makes that, Valve makes Steam VR, Valve kind of helped make the Vive. So I think they'll be first in line to really create that cool experience. Maybe one day we'll see MLG and ESL and DreamHack actually create a spectator pass for VR.
Yeah, it kind of feels like the D&D tabletop experience, except for watching esports happen. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, one thing to keep in mind is that, we were talking about the hardware requirements for playing, for using VR, and one of the things that I see as a bigger trend, and obviously we're trying to promote as much high quality, high performance, large storage kind of solutions on local PCs, but the reality is right now, if you start looking at some of these, these higher bandwidth requirement types of technologies. So, as an example, 4K. Typically, you look at the Netflix standard as an example, is HEVC. That's about a 25 megabit per second type of a technology. So it basically takes about 3 megabytes per second to be able to transmit the Netflix in 4K quality. When you go up to 8K, it gets to be about 25 megabits per second, about 75 megabits per second, or about 10 megabytes per second. When you start introducing VR on top of that, you're going to actually theoretically have to be able to interact with this environment. So you'd be actually transmitting all different angles within this type of environment. So as we start to increase the amount of bandwidth required in order to be able to interact with these types of high quality feeds from video, really the barrier is no longer your PC. The barrier is going to be the bandwidth that you're able to get over your internet connection. And right now, even if you look at the Netflix requirement as an example, only about 20% of households in the United States have the necessary bandwidth to be able to actually transmit Netflix in 4K quality using their standards. So we've got to do a lot of stuff, not just on the PC side in terms of the hardware requirements, but we've got to do a lot to be able to actually increase the amount of bandwidth on our pipes coming into our home to be able to actually be able to reach that next level from a holy grail kind of perspective in terms of some of the streaming applications that we see coming down the pike.
I want to hop in here just for interest of time. What are some other products, non-VR, or product lines you feel will benefit or transform esports in the coming years? One question that was submitted are what are like HDR monitors and what are their benefits for gaming? Maybe a couple quick products that come to mind, and then we'll go ahead and take a few questions before we wrap up.
I'm the Samsung guy, so I'll talk about the monitors. But the cool thing that you see in terms of what's happening in terms of display technology, like was mentioned before, is that again the type of dynamic kind of range that you're able to see within the range of spectrum from dark to light is a lot more realistic than it was even a few years ago. So the kind of things that we're seeing, particularly when you go to 4K and 8K kind of content, is just kind of amazing, honestly. And so we're going to continue to drive that. The other thing that we're driving on a display perspective is that curved aperture, basically, to be able to have the full kind of surround types of things. So you'll see more monitors, more desktop monitors that are able to actually incorporate that. And it just gives you a kind of a more natural viewing angles on a lot of the things that you're doing that have action that's going on in the periphery. So when you start setting up multiple monitors, it gives you more of the immersive kind of view, the old flight simulator kind of a view, but in a more natural way. So we're continuing to drive that on both a gaming perspective as well as on a regular kind of a TV perspective in terms of content consumption.
So quick show of hands. Who here has ever argued TN versus IPS panels? Or cared about that?
Can I raise my hand too?
Yeah. Significant number, right? Yeah, me too, right? So an HDR monitor is the most colorful, most sharp, most detailed monitor you will ever see in your entire life, okay? It is the ultimate in visual quality. It will render reds and golds and cyans that displays have never been able to show you before.
Oh, Logitech would like that. That's your colors right there.
Yeah.
Chris, is that good?
I'm incredibly happy about this.
The other interesting thing is that the difference between dark scenes and light scenes gets much more detailed. Your average daylight scene is very detailed. You look at a building, you can see all the windows, you can see all the bricks, but when you go to a dark scene, it tends to be very muddy. And the unfortunate reality is that every monitor and every TV, almost everybody here in the room has ever seen, is based on content standards developed for black and white TVs in the 1930s. Even today, in 2016, your monitors are running on 1930 content standards. All right, so HDR is the 21st century standard to go with our 21st century monitors and our 21st century TVs. And the leap in quality is just breathtaking. It's hard to go back. And so any game that can benefit, right? Any game master to use these HDR displays, and they are coming in 2016 and 2017, will look undeniably better than the games that aren't mastered to use HDR color for HDR displays and HDR TVs. It's transformative, truly. You have to try it.
So I got to ask, when you talk about these kind of displays, how does it compare the refresh rate and response time and display input lag as it would to a TN or IPS?
Good question.
Because there's a lot of hardcore PC guys out here that are going to say, hey, if I get a
latency.
1 inch, like half a millisecond of change, of delay, of input lag, I'm going to notice, I'm going to freak out, I'll flip a table.
So we're going deep for a minute. There is a feature called, well, this idea called an EOTF, an electro-optical transfer function. Long story short, it's how you convert data bits, binary bits, into optical light coming out of the TV. A game or a piece of software will say, hey, show the user this. Well, how do you convert the binary to what the user actually sees? That's defined by the EOTF. And it's really the EOTF in today's displays that were developed for black and white TVs. They were only designed to go up to what we call 100 nits of brightness. And 1 nit is 1 candle in a completely black room. That 1 meter radius that you can see from that candle, that's 1 nit. Displays today are 500, 600, 700, even 1,000 nits of brightness. So the standard only accommodates 1/10 of what the displays are actually capable of doing. So how can anything beyond that 100 ever be accurate? And it's not possible. The standard doesn't do it. So what ends up happening is the colors are just stretched out. You get inaccurate colors. The display becomes very bright and uncomfortable. But at the end of the day, what's interesting is that your TV, your monitor, already runs an EOTF. So changing it to simply accommodate more colors or higher brightness or lower brightness doesn't change the latency at all. And the other thing that's true is PC games already use HDR internally inside the game engine. But because they're outputting to standard TVs and standard monitors, they run it through a process called a tone mapper that just crushes everything down to meet the display that you have on your desk. One of our jobs is to get game developers to change their tone mapper to work in HDR space. And that will create a content chain, hardware, software, display, that will open up the colors, open up the contrast without affecting latency or performance in any way. It's free quality.
I actually learned something really cool. Thank you so much.
That's pretty good. I do want to hop quick. If we have any questions, we've got just a bit over 10 minutes left. There is a microphone over here. I think we're only going to have time for maybe 3 or 4.
All right,
First come, first serve.
Let's make those questions quick, and let's make those.
We'll try to
If you
do
do have
like
questions
one
for us
question.
afterwards, you can let us know.
You're not supposed to lead, you're supposed to
Our
ask questions, guys.
panelists.
Come on.
I thought, look at everybody's getting up to go to ask questions.
Yeah, make those questions quick. We'll make our answers quick. Let's get as many people as we can.
Okay, sure.
Go ahead, start.
Can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yep.
So I think one of the biggest the breakthroughs in consumer electronics over the last decade or so has been the smartphone, and in terms of adoption rate, right? And smartphones today aren't cheap either, right? $600, $700 retail, but most people get them subsidized through carriers or, even buy them through a payment plan or something like that, right? Is that a sales model that you think would be effective in the VR space when we're again talking about high prices for content or high prices for hardware that can really drive the software, right? Can you partner with software vendors or even a middleman to kind of expand the cost out for the consumer?
We kind of see some of that stuff happening with console gaming already, and phones is a great way to talk about that. It's a really good thought. Until there's a consistent stream of VR content that maybe could prescribe a subscription play, then we could actually look at some kind of subsidization model. I don't know if you guys see any other real opportunity, but as long as content is coming out there and people are willing to pay a monthly price or an annual price, then I think we can actually see some subsidization opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically the same monetization model you'll see for Pandora or Spotify or something like that, where you basically get an entire library of content, but you're only paying for, your monthly rental of that content. So certainly those models exist. I mean, we have some devices that are more consumer devices that are basically being subsidized by the carriers in the same way their phones are. So we have like a 360-degree camera today that you can buy through carrier channels and is subsidized in a similar way that you get on a handset, similar with tablets and things like that as well. So I wouldn't say that that's the only model, but there's certainly, we're seeing interest in different ways of subsidizing the cost of the hardware up front to be able to make it more affordable for consumers to afford.
I'm indifferent as long as it's on my hardware.
Next question.
With displays moving to higher resolutions and the bandwidth of standard display transfer protocols like DisplayPort 1.2 and HDMI, when do you think we're going to start to see displays and video cards that can handle 4K at above 60 hertz?
Oh, that's an excellent question. So mid-year, we have a product line coming up, codenamed Polaris, and that incorporates DisplayPort 1.3 and HDMI 2.0B. And the big takeaway is that that HDMI 1.3 will bring you 4K, 120 hertz, or 190 hertz, 1440p ultra wide, or 240 hertz, 1440p, or 240 hertz, 1080p. With dynamic refresh rates, with HDR color. So yes, the industry is definitely taking notice, and you will see those graphics cards, at least from us, this year.
Hey, I have to start off by saying I'm a huge Dota 2 fan, and every year I look forward to going to TI and to Seattle. But gaming still has a pretty huge negative aspect in social, and a huge social stigma. The introverts and neckbeards and people who don't shower, especially with my gender. Are you guys
You just
worried
called out
that
half
with
this room. Way to go. Wow.
Are you guys
shaved
worried that
today.
with VR and esports, you guys are further breeding an introverted generation?
I'm sorry, what was that last bit?
Are you guys worried that you're further breeding an introverted generation with VR and esports?
I actually have to very much disagree. I think we're actually breeding more of a inclusive, more of a communicating, more of an extroverted culture. I say this because I grew up with competition in sports, and with esports is what really drove me. Esports have really taught me how to be a winner, a leader, a communicator. And this is just not just when I used to compete, but also all these facets that I learned from competition really helped me in everyday life. And also I see a lot of people, we just talked about earlier, the sense of community that comes from esports, the sense of treehouse effect, the clubhouse effect, where you go to a place, whether it's online or in person, and you talk about this. You go to your friends and say, hey, I just tried League of Legends for the first time 7 years ago. Let's get some more friends and play. Same thing with Dota 5 years ago. Let's get some friends and play. Counter-Strike's been around for 20 years now. Almost 20 years, like 18 years, I think? 18 years. That's kind of a good example of a long tail potential of an actual traditional sport.
Yeah, I think it's just the opposite. I mean, I interact more with my friends that are living remotely. I don't live in the same place that I lived when I grew up, and I can still talk to them every week simply because I'm playing online with them on whatever game. These types of events you can see. This certainly isn't, PAX isn't promoting introversion and social isolation. Clearly, when communities come together and when people are able to interact with people who have the same interest, it promotes a more interest and better, better communities. So I think it's just the opposite.
Yeah, let's remember that we as gamers have a responsibility to say, hey, our stuff is fun, let's bring more people into it. There's a game for everybody, whether it's on a phone, whether you're watching it on a TV with a group of friends, or a tablet. Everyone can get someone into gaming, whether it's our friends and family, or older relatives that just kind of shy away from this stuff, and teach them that this is fun, this is inclusive, this is something that can really help bring people together.
Next question.
What do you think the R&D and implementation timetable would be for cable-free VR headsets?
That's actually possible now. There's a headset called the Sulan Q, which integrates some of our hardware right into the headset. It's basically a computer on your head. Very low power usage, but so that process is clearly already started, and we know people would prefer wireless versus wired. Right, I think anybody would. The big challenge is latency. Wireless adds latency, and that is one of the things that ruins the VR experience. So I think a lot on the RF side or the wireless communication side has to evolve, but clearly that process has begun and is inevitable.
It's a kind of a hardware question. Besides your retinal resolution display limit that you haven't been able to hit yet and the ISP bandwidth barriers, what other barriers are preventing a Microsoft HoloLens headset or a Google Glass headset sort of converging with an Oculus Rift or an HTC Vive type of headset. Why hasn't Samsung done this yet?
Yeah, I don't.
I think you stumped us.
I'm stumped. Yeah, we're stumped. We're all stumped.
Actually, one of the things that I saw recently, going back to the Sulan Q, is it's hard to combine the HoloLens AR experience with the sort of Vive or Rift VR experience, because the type of headset, the physical form factor has to be different, right? One has to be an opaque lens, or like a plastic shield, and lenses sit behind that, whereas the HoloLens has to be a clear shield, right? So you can project onto the real world. What we saw Sulan do is have cameras that scan the environment in front of you, very much like the Vive does, but it actually projects that into your lenses. So you get the physical real world digitally mapped into your space, and then you can overlay digital content on top of that. And I think that's a really cool way to merge AR and VR together, to bring in scanning of the environment into the virtual space.
Okay. How long do you feel it will take to incorporate VR into mainstream media, such as shows like Days of Our Lives and Ellen DeGeneres?
Days of Our
Are we
Lives
doing bets?
still on the air?
Are we taking bets here?
It was in a coma.
I don't know, does anyone here watch Days of Our Lives?
I'm a huge fan. No.
We got one, two. All right, two people. All right. That's a weird question because we can't really predict that. I think hopefully the same way that gaming has become a thing that is in everyone's homes now. That took what, 20, 30, 40 years?
Yeah.
So it could be about the same. Those are generally the key indicators of something has done that same kind of experience and brought that to the mainstream at home. But you also see a lot of fast tracking of that. I think mobile phones have really fast tracked a lot of that stuff. PC gaming alone has fast tracked a lot of that. So it might be as soon as 10, 20 years.
You know, I think one of the things that I think you will see is, and again, this is not my Samsung hat, this is kind of my own personal observations, is that I think what you'll see is augmented types of things. So you'll have, you'll be able to watch an NFL broadcast, and you'll be able to put on a VR headset, and in similar ways that they were talking about, you'll be able to add additional information within that same thing. I think you'll see that in the real world environment, like at actual NFL, NBA, and NFL stadiums or NBA arenas, relatively quickly. I think there's enough monetization of that to be able to afford that upfront cost, but certainly at the home experience, you'll see Major League Baseball or somebody probably pull the trigger on something like that within the next 10 to 15 years, I would say.
Good morning. This pertains to the point that was brought up by the gentleman from Samsung in regards to the data, the bandwidth required for VR streaming and VR content in general, particularly for the for the Samsung VR right now, currently, but in the future as well. For VR content to be able to be streamed properly, and the FEC constantly trying to limit data caps, and the large ISPs trying to put in tiered data limitations on everyone, net neutrality, SOPA, PIPA, etc. Do you see any role in the hardware development of the hardware development companies playing a role in keeping or fighting or coordinating with these ISPs like Verizon, AT&T, Comcast, Time Warner, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's two things that we can do. So one is we can adapt to the real world as it exists today. So one of the things that we do in our VR devices today is that we've got two kind of ways that you can view content. One is sort of the immediate instant play type of situation where it basically streams at whatever level of bandwidth that you can support in your existing environment. The other is you can stream it. You can basically cache it locally and then be able to stream it in full high def, or in the highest definition available that the content is available in. You see the same thing with Netflix. It adaptively responds to whatever bandwidth you have available, and I think that that's what the hardware manufacturers can do. In terms of helping to push the industry to encourage consumers to have higher, lower cost bandwidth availability, there's not much that you can do except to continue their large customers of ours, and we can certainly help enable them from a technology side to be able to use the latest technologies, optimize the broadcast standards to be able to take advantage of the new streams that are available, and then develop devices on the end of it that can basically receive and upscale the compressed information that's being transmitted over the lower, smaller bandwidth pipes.
I think we're about out of time. You got a real quick one, and we'll wrap up with your question.
Yeah, I guess, obviously, sorry. Basically, the cost of VR, cost of entry is a pretty big barrier. But like me growing up, GPS kind of came on with military technology made available to the public. And a lot of people don't talk about VR and AR going together as two sides of the same coin. Do you guys think gamers are going to be enough to help push VR and augmented reality into the mainstream, or are we going to need an early industry adopter, whether it's a military or an architecture firm to build, buildings safer and quicker, to get that push because of the cost of entry? I don't think too many kids here can convince their mom and dad to drop $2,000 on a PC and a headset.
So it comes back again to the killer app, right?
Right.
Once we've got experiences and content that are really compelling and that are really driving adoption by people who can't afford the current cost structure, that is, it pushes the industry forward. It helps everybody else out. So content's going to be king in this case.
Yeah, I think we're going to, go ahead.
I was going to say that previous indicators of success in that space were, hey, gaming drove digital distribution. Gaming drove content distribution. Gaming drove live streaming. Gaming was first to adopt Twitter and Facebook as people moved away from forums and pushing everyone else in the mainstream to adopt Twitter and Facebook as other great social media tools. Gaming has always been an advanced research group of the entire world. So take some pride, take the fact that you as early adopters, you people hear this panel at 10 a.m. on a Sunday morning at PAX. These lights are very sobering. Thank you for coming here. This is the time and place. You guys are part of this. Everything you do, everything you buy, all the feedback you give, you're helping drive this.
Great. Thank you to our panelists for coming.